Like attempting a backflip on a snowboard for the very first time, this all-new Mazda 6e electric sedan could end up being a complete disaster. And there's three reasons why. The first is that, well, it isn't technically a Mazda, it's a Deepal Mazda.
That's right, you're a big fat phony!
Secondly, people are not buying passenger cars in the numbers that they used to. You can thank the ubiquitous SUV for that one. And thirdly, let's not forget Mazda's MX-30, its very first EV, which was axed in Australia after less than 3 years on sale. Ouch. But who knows, maybe Mazda will land that backflip with this new model, which also happens to be the brand's first ever Chinese-built vehicle sold in Australia. Yes, this is not built in Japan. It's not all doom and gloom for this new Mazda passenger car, which will arrive in Australia in 2026, because it has several attributes that will pique your interest. Here's what you need to know about the new Mazda 6e electric sedan. So, what exactly is the Mazda 6e? Well, it's not a Mazda 6 per se. However, one could argue that it's probably the closest Mazda will ever get to replacing the much loved sedan. What's that I hear you say? There was also a Mazda 6 wagon. Well, that is true, but the chances of Mazda Deepal Changan doing a wagon version of this vehicle are pretty slim. However, we have seen some digital mock-ups and AI renders of what that could look like, and it's pretty schmick. So guys, if you're listening, and we know you watch the channel, Changan Chief Boss, do it, make it, be sick. Anyways, this Chinese-made vehicle is built by Changan, with which Mazda has had a technical partnership for 20 years. So, you know, they've been hanging out for a while.
You're finally admitting we're best friends.
No, that is not what I'm saying.
And in China, you'll find the vehicle this is based on, its donor car called the Deepal L07. So that begs the question, is this Mazda just a reskinned version of that vehicle? A bit of badge engineering? I'll get to that soon.
One thing's for sure though, we're going to see a lot more of this sort of thing from well-known brands. Because right now, Chinese car makers make better EVs than Japanese brands. But Japanese car makers have something that Chinese companies want: brand equity, established dealerships, and relationships with Aussie buyers.
So, how much are you going to pay for this? Mazda is saying less than $55,000, which is relatively competitive in this segment. And it will arrive in Australia in the second quarter of 2026. So that's April, May, June-ish, if there's no delays. Set to lock horns with the BYD Seal and Tesla Model 3 electric sedans, both of which are also built in China, I reckon this vehicle needs to be priced under 50 grand to really give it the best shot at challenging those two vehicles, which are from two mega EV brands. They're big players. But that said, Changan is China's fourth largest car maker, so it's no minnow. For that money, you'll get a fair bit of technology and luxury, including a few pop-out elements, including the door handles and the rear spoiler. And I've got to say, the interior fit-out is pretty schmick. So, what are the differences between the Deepal L07 and this new Mazda 6e? And is it just a reskinned version of that Chinese vehicle? Well, the answer is yes and no.
No. Well, yes.
Mazda has sculpted an entirely new exterior, complete with signature headlights and brake lights that have a very Mazda look and feel. It's a sleek looking number overall, and it measures about 4.9 meters long, which means it's a mid-sized car. And you've got this light panel at the front here, which I'm not a huge fan of. There's no texture here, it's just a flat panel with some lighting behind it. There's this little bit here that I can't unsee. But in terms of the overall design, this is probably the only element that looks a little bit subpar. The rest of it is all quite premium. But let's face it, this is not a purebred Mazda. The underpinnings, the nuts and bolts, they're Deepal. And while Mazda has spent a couple of years tuning this car, tweaking the power delivery, the suspension, the platform and the powertrain is Deepal. It's no different to that L07. This is a litmus test of sorts for Mazda. Japanese build quality is not part of the deal, so in some respects, it's a bit of a gamble. But in saying that, Chinese quality and manufacturing in the automotive space has improved dramatically over the last few years. Anyway, the tech specs are fairly modest for an EV. You've got a single e-motor driving the rear wheels, and it's brisk rather than brutal in terms of acceleration. The LFP battery pack is rated at almost 80 kilowatt hours, which is pretty good. And Mazda says this will deliver a range of more than 500 kilometers. And if you look at the Deepal specs, the L07, it does about 550 kilometers. So we'll see where that lands. In terms of charging, it will be pretty quick, but not class leading when you're doing your DC fast charging. However, one significant change over the Chinese market Deepal L07 will be the suspension. So we're going to get the European tune, but Mazda Australia execs say there will be a bit of fine tuning going on in Australia. There has actually been already. We've seen camo cars, test mules of this vehicle undergoing testing in Australia. So I think that'll be a good thing. Hopefully it's a reasonably significant change, a meaningful change, and not just ADAS tweaking. And the idea with this particular vehicle is that it will be more engaging and more satisfying to drive than an SUV. The flip side is it's lower to the ground, it's a little bit harder to get in and out, especially if you've got hip and back problems. I don't, so it's fine for me.
There is a range extender or plug-in hybrid version of the Deepal L07 in China, but at the moment it seems as though it's not for export markets like Australia and Europe, which is a shame because these sorts of vehicles are proving very popular with buyers right now.
You've got seriously primo materials right across the cabin. The seats have a bit of a sort of Alcantara suede-like feel, plus there's leather sections as well. This leather-like material all across the center console. There's a bit of suede on the dash, more fake leather. The whole thing looks and feels great. The steering wheel, really nice to hold. Mazda has done a tremendous job making this feel different inside to the Deepal, but also rather upmarket. It does feel pretty lush. I'm a bit impressed. The seats not only look pretty sweet, they're also really, really comfortable too. They're power adjustable, they're heated, they're cooled. I like that. You've got a nice amount of storage here, cup holders, wireless phone charger, a bit of storage under there, and ergonomically, it feels like a good place to sit as well. I love the high-res screen here behind the steering wheel. You've got a large central touchscreen, and it does feel very similar to the Deepal models, such as the S07 that's already available in Australia, but it all works, and the processor behind the screen is really good. All this stuff moves through menus really quickly. It's got good refresh rate, plenty of processing power. I like what I see here. The back seat is pretty good. It's not quite as roomy as some mid-size SUVs, but I've got reasonable leg room here. Headroom's a little tight, but that's to be expected with a, sedan hatch liftback sort of vehicle. There is a bit of claustrophobia with these large seats, but again, the leather-like finishes and suede and the headrests, it's all very comfy. It looks and feels great. There's a few little extra features there. Plus, you can adjust the sunroofs here. You can open the twin sunroofs, close them, that's lovely. And you can move the front seat forward and back, the passenger seat. Uber drivers are going to love that. And it's got a third row climate control as well, so you can turn that on and do the air vents there. So yeah, overall, pretty nice place to chill out. External storage solutions in this Mazda are very good. Check out the Frunk. So this is 70 litres plus. Here you get a lot of stuff in there. You can get your groceries and you can put valuables in there because it's locked when it's shut flat. Plus, there's also a secret compartment under the floor. It's all waterproofed, so you can stick some ice and drinks in there, keep them cold, and there's even a plug underneath that so you can drain it all out. Quite thoughtful, I like that. Now, let's check out the boot. Okay, you've got a power-operated tailgate, and if you look at this, it's actually technically a hatchback, which is pretty good because it gives you really good access to this large boot space. It is quite deep. There's a lot of room here. You'll be able to get a lot of junk back here, but don't think you're going to get quite as much space as in maybe a Tesla Model 3, for instance. And there's a couple of things that irk me. Just like with every EV, there's a goop kit. There's no spare tire. So when you pop a tire, you got to put the goop in and it seals it up, apparently. Also, look at this. Why is that not an LED light? I hope they change that when this car arrives in Australia midway through 2026, because that's a bit weak sauce, really. When it comes to mainstream car brands in Australia, Mazda has a fairly upmarket vibe, which should play into its favour when this bad boy blasts into showrooms. But there's no guarantee this will be a sellout success for the brand in Australia. However, Mazda has sort of protected itself against failure in a weird way. If this car doesn't inspire buyers to run out en masse and buy hundreds of these, it's not the end of the world. Mazda can call its mates at Changan over in China and say, hey, it's not working, kill it.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Because let's face it, Mazda has not poured huge amounts of capital into a brand new car from scratch. This is essentially a reskinned Deepal. So yes, it's invested a lot of money in the design, the interior, and the tuning. It's not going to be a complete waste of time and effort if it fails. It's not outside the realms of possibility that this car could go the same way as the Mercedes-Benz X-Class. Check out my video on that vehicle for a sobering look at what happens when cars don't hit their target. So that's the Mazda 6e in a nutshell. It's rather fancy inside and out, plus it has that sportier European suspension tune and possibly even a few Aussie tweaks as well, which should make it rather engaging to drive, not to mention the fact it's rear-wheel drive as well. If Mazda can get the price under $50,000, I reckon this will represent very, very good value for money. And it will also lead, likely, to more Chinese product from Mazda coming into Australia, including the new EZ60 SUV. Stay tuned for our first drive of this vehicle on Aussie soil later in the year. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.